welcome. You are learning your first chapter of Chapter 1, 1.1, Point Signs Planes. So, this chapter has a lot of vocab words, and that's why we're going ahead and watching this video, so that way we can get through it. So, the first vocab word you'll notice is point. A point is a location and has no size. A point is represented by a small dot and is named by a capital letter. So we're clear, a point just looks like a dot and you name it with one capital letter. Next vocab word is line. A line has a series of points that extends in two opposite directions without end. You can name the line by any 2 points on the line or one lowercase letter. So we're going to go ahead and keep reading because this information also is included in our line. Through any 2 points, there's exactly one line. The important thing here is to know how to name a line, and we're going to go ahead and state that with a little highlighter, and that's with any 2 points on our line, we can name our line, or with a lowercase letter, with one lowercase letter. So our first example you can see is right down here. It's line AB. And you can see that I wrote that down here. And when we write line AB, we have to make sure we include the symbol, which is an arrow with 2 arrows going in opposite direction. That is not the only option that we can use. We can also say it's line BA. The last option is also there that you probably saw a little while ago. It says it's also called line T with one lowercase letter. You can't just make up that letter. That letter has to be given to you in order for you to name it with that lowercase letter. All right, moving on. Our next one is collinear points. While collinear points is just points on the same line. So, our points that lie on the same line. Pretty basic. The next one is plane. A plane has a flat surface that has no thickness. A plane contains many lines and extends without end. You can name a plane with a single capital letter or by at least 3 non-collinear points. All right, I see a new word there. Non-collinear. We learned collinear, so non-collinear has to logically be points that are not on the same line. So points not on the same line. Other important things, super important, is how we name a plane. So we can name a plane with a single capital letter or at least 3 non-collinear points. So this is how we name our plane. Name a plane. All right. The other sentence that's in that box says, through any non-collinear points, there is exactly one plane. So you just need to remember that anywhere you see 3 non-collinear points, you have a plane automatically. All right, we're going to go ahead and do our first example. Example 1 says, in the figure below, name 3 points that are collinear and non-collinear. So what you're going to do right now is pause the video, and I want you to go ahead and name 3 collinear points and 3 non-collinear. All right, I've given you enough time. Hopefully you paused your video and you wrote down your non-collinear and collinear. So we're going to start with collinear first. All right, collinear points. There's only 3 options for collinear, and so you have to write Z, Y, W. The order doesn't actually matter, so you can also write it as YWZ or WZY. All three of these options are good. Okay? They're all the same. So let's write non-collinear now. Whoops. Now, you actually have more than a couple of options. So we can write down X, Z, Y here as one option. And a second option we can also write down could be Z, X, W. You notice that these two examples that I gave you have different letters. Both of these are acceptable and right because they're non-collinear, which means that they're not on the same line. All right, let's move on to example 2. And again, you're going to pause the video after I read the example for you. And it says, name the plane shown in 2 different ways. Now, I'm going to help you out a little bit. You have to go back to where we talked about the definition of a plane. And if you go back to the definition of a plane, we wrote down in blue here, we highlighted it, that to name a plane, you have to use 3 non-collinear points, or you have to use 1 single capital letter. So at this point, you can go ahead and pause your video and name your plane. All right, you should have paused it and named your plane. So I'm only going to give us a couple options just because there's many options and most of them are probably right as long as you're writing 3 non-collinear points. So here we go. Plane, RSU, plane, RUT. I'll give you one more option. Plane, TUS. Now it did say 1 single capital letter, and because these letters are all on the outside, I would allow you to use one of these. It doesn't matter which one. So we can actually call this also plane S. Now, I want you guys to understand that you should never use 4 letters altogether, because if you do, you might give me the wrong order, and order is important when we're talking about that. So anyways, just stick with 3 letters. That's all you need to do. All right, let's keep moving to our vocab. So our next term is segment, and a segment is very similar to a line. So let's talk about what the definition is. A segment is the part of a line consisting of 2 endpoints and all the points between them. So the similarities of the line and the segment is that they both have points, at least 2 points. And in between those 2 points, they have many, many points in between them. The only difference is that a line is never ending, it keeps going, and a segment has 2 stop signs. So let's talk about that word that I just used. Endpoint. I use an endpoint. I identify it 2 different ways. I identify it as a starting point or a stopping point. Okay? So you'll notice here we have 2 examples of segments, and we're going to name them. So our first one, which is on the left side, we're going to name this segment as segment CD. And the symbol that we use on top does not have arrows, it's a single line on top of it. Or we can name it as segment DC. The second one that we have here, we can name this as segment PN or segment NP. All right, let's move on to our next term, array. Array is the part of a line consisting of 1 endpoint and all the points of the line on one side of the other endpoint. So, let's be clear. An endpoint, array has one endpoint, just one, and it keeps going in the opposite direction. So the way we name our array is by starting with the endpoint. So this example here, the endpoint is A. So let's go ahead and write down how we name it. Name array with its endpoint first. So in this case, it's going to be array AF, and it has only one arrow. The arrow must always go to the right, just like I have it here. Always go to the right. You cannot name this array FA. Nope, that's not an option. And you cannot name this array AF with the arrow going in the opposite direction. Nope, not an option. The only possible option here is array AF. We're almost done, guys, so let's go ahead and finish up. We have two last terms, and then we have a couple of concepts that we need to go over. So let's go ahead and talk about the first term here. Our vocab word is opposite rays. Opposite rays are two collinear rays with the same endpoint. So that we understand, an opposite ray has to have the same endpoint. Basically, the endpoint has to be in the middle of our line, quote unquote line. So remember, a ray has to start with its endpoint. So in this case, we can see that our opposite rays are going to go in opposite direction and have to start with the same letter. So that means that I'm talking about ray BC is opposite of ray BA. These two rays that I mentioned, these are opposite rays. If I threw in another letter on this line and called it D, I can give us another pair. The other pair that I could say ray CD is opposite to ray CB. They go in opposite directions. In opposite directions. All right, almost done, guys. Coplanar. Coplanar is points and lines that are on the same plane. All right, that covers it for our vocab words, and we're going to go ahead and finish with our two last concepts, and that is it for our lesson. So, our first concept says, if two lines intersect, then they intersect in exactly one point. So that's what we see here, two lines. We have line AE and line BD, and they intersect, they cross exactly at that point. So let's go ahead and define that word that I just said, intersect. That means cross each other. Okay? So these two lines intersect at point C. All right, next concept. If two planes intersect, then they intersect in exactly one line. So similar concepts, but not the same, because this is referring to two lines and this is referring to two planes. So we have plane RST, which is the green plane, intersects the purple plane, which is STW, at exactly one line. What line is that? They intersect at line ST. Now, key things that you need to remember for this. This is a three-dimensional object, meaning that we could see it in real life. Two papers intersecting each other, basically, is what we see here. So it's not two-dimensional like this guy. Two-dimensional means that you simply have it on paper and that's it. But this one floats in the air. That's it, guys. That's 1.1. Thank you for listening.